Steve Bauer. Welcome to episode 2 of Shootout on DAZN, where we will debate the hot soccer topics. And with me once again to do just that in Toronto, the one, the only Greg Brady. How you doing, my friend? How much did you enjoy that last day of the Premier League season?
I was probably like most DAZN viewers, kind of gripped by Man United Leicester, right? And then Man United scores, and you think, okay, they're safe. Chelsea's got their match well in hand. So we cut over to Villa. Then Villa scores on West Ham, and just before we get a chance to say, well, they're safe, West Ham responds to the Grealish goal a minute later. So we had a lot of drama in Aston Villa and West Ham. And I can tell you, Aston Villa, a lot of history with that club, but it's goodbye to Bournemouth, goodbye, obviously, to Norwich as well, and Leeds United. What a story. I mean, we already knew that was the case before Sunday, Steve, but back up, where some say they belong in the Premier League. It's been well over a decade, so that's a lot of excitement for mid-September when Leeds is back.
So it is all done, the Premier League season. So let's get to some important questions. First up, Greg, who is your Premier League player of the season?
Well, it's tough not to pick somebody from Liverpool, but I'm going to. Kevin De Bruyne, I thought, was just fantastic. He only missed 2 matches for City in the Premier League, and they lost them both. So I'll say Kevin De Bruyne. I know it has to be a Liverpool man for you, and there's a couple different ones to pick from.
There was. And listen, first and foremost, if there's one player this season for pure entertainment I would pay dollars to see, then that is Kevin De Bruyne. But I'm talking about the all-round package here, the all-round influence of the season. You have to go to the champions. You're absolutely right. And you have to go to the man with the armband who lifted the trophy in Jordan Henderson. When he signed at Liverpool, there were an awful lot of Liverpool players when he came from Sunderland wondered what on earth Kenny Dalglish, ironically, the man who handed him the title last Wednesday at Anfield, was doing. They wanted him out of the club. He didn't settle, but he showed a terrific mental attitude as well as ability. Yes, he's not Steven Gerrard. Yes, he's not the eye-catching player. But let me tell you, from inside that Liverpool dressing room, I've spoken to him a couple of times in recent weeks, and indeed his manager, Jurgen Klopp. He has an enormous amount of influence and respect in that Liverpool dressing room. You only have to look at the 90% win rate when he started. Jordan Henderson has only lost 2 of the last 68 Premier League games in which he's played in for Liverpool, Greg. That says it all. He's a leader. And to follow Gerrard as well and do something that Steven Gerrard, of course, didn't manage to do and lead Liverpool to the Premier League title and the way they've done it, player of the year for me, Greg.
But I look at City and I think, where are they without Kevin De Bruyne? Does Raheem Sterling have the goals he has without Kevin De Bruyne setting him up a good chunk of those 20 times? And we often think of goal scorers. And I know Kevin De Bruyne is not a trademark striker, but we often think, Steve, about goal scorers, and we don't consider them leaders. And no doubt, leadership, you referenced it with Henderson, leadership's an important part of the package. But De Bruyne doesn't get enough credit for utilizing players around him. For me, Kevin De Bruyne is at the peak of his powers right now, and I think so many managers. Let's ask 18 other managers who they'd rather have going into next year, De Bruyne or Henderson. And you might get a few Henderson stalwarts, but I think most people would prefer the Belgian superstar.
They would on ability, but as I say, the all-round influence, and Kevin De Bruyne may well have the captain's armband for Manchester City, of course, following David Silva's exit from the club. But Jordan Henderson, let's not forget his off-the-field influence as well. In the pandemic, he phoned each and every Premier League captain, got them together, made sure that they were donating their millions to the correct way of helping the key workers, the NHS workers as well. Unbelievable maturity and leadership, as well as his footballing abilities. He's a terrific human being, and seeing him lift that trophy at Anfield after that game, that incredible game, of course, that you saw on DAZN against Chelsea at Anfield. To lift that Premier League trophy was a wonderful story for Liverpool, but also for him personally too.
Kevin De Bruyne has still got football to play this summer on DAZN as well in the Champions League. And I will say this, if he's not chosen, if De Bruyne feels he fell short of that award, I think he's going to be an inspired player anyway for what Man City's got to do. They've got that huge tie against Real Madrid coming up in a couple weeks. But no question, Kevin De Bruyne, for me, still player of the year.
We shall see. Don't forget, for those Premier League fans wanting more, as Greg says, September 12th, it's back here on DAZN. Right, Greg, now the season is finished. Premier League manager of the season for me, please.
So maybe it's a little bit of a wild card. Maybe it's a little bit off the beaten path. But I don't know who did a better job with their starting 11 Saturday in and Saturday out, Steve, than Chris Wilder in Sheffield United's colors.
Wow, listen, you got no bigger Chris Wilder fan than me. I've known him 20 years, since he was in step 5 of English football. However, I think even Chris would concede that this season, the man has to get the Premier League manager of this season. Jurgen Klopp has ended that 30-year wait. And over those 30 years, many managers, many great managers, have tried and failed to bring the English League title back to Liverpool. And the way that Jurgen Klopp has done it after the disappointment of last season, when we all know it went to the last day of last season, when we all know that in any other season, Liverpool would have been crowned Premier League champions. Did they feel sorry for themselves? No. They went and won the Champions of Europe, of course, in Madrid against Tottenham. No doubt that that helped. But the mentality of the manager to get that group back together, Greg, and go again, and not just go again, but hit the standards that they did. Remember, this fella hasn't lost a Premier League game at Anfield in 59 matches. 59 matches. It's certainly a fortress and more again. To get to 99 points and to win it, let's be honest, even before lockdown, truly incredible, Greg.
Sheffield United, though, I thought they really, not that Jurgen Klopp's a traditional manager, but if anyone was non-traditional, and you could speak to this from knowing him, the way Wilder managed in the Premier League, very non-traditional. It's almost like a basketball press defense at times, and he would do that early in matches. Not when you get a goal down and you need the ball back, but in 0-0 games, in 1-1 games, just a real swarming defense. I thought his transfers, Steve, were really smart. It's not the kind of cash that, Blades fans are used to seeing Sheffield United throw around, but the Ollie McBurney money was very, very well spent. Sander Berge added a lot of depth in January as well. So they brought in players. They didn't wreck the system. They let the established players who got them promoted and got them into, a top 8 standing most of the season. They let them continue their roles, but they enhanced, okay? And that's a difficult thing sometimes, to keep a locker room, to keep a side really united in that concept, because everyone's gonna be tugging at the oars for the boat on different occasions. So I loved, Steve, I can't leave it without telling you how well they played against big clubs. You know this. They were excellent against the big clubs. Maybe not Liverpool per se, but a pair of 3-goal wins. They beat Chelsea 3-0. They beat Spurs 3-1, and that was after the restart. Again, a little bit of sputtering leaves them out of Europe, but I don't doubt they've raised expectations. They've raised expectations for Wilder and for their players to be a top 10 club next year.
But this fellow Jurgen Klopp, 30 years, it's all that anyone in the city of Liverpool and all their fans around the world has been banging on about. And from the moment he walked in October 2015, Greg, he got the city, he got the club, he got the connection, he got the unity. I was very lucky to have an exclusive interview with him a couple of weeks ago. He was telling me this story on the first day of training. He got all the players together in the centre of the pitch and he said to them, do you know every member of staff inside that training ground? And they didn't. And he gave them homework for a week to go and learn. The lady who made them the pasta, the guy who let them in on the gate, the person who picked up their dirty laundry in their kit to go and wash it. And he said, if we're not all one team, we don't win one title. And when you go back to 2015 as well, I remember he was talking about it as well. They had a game against Crystal Palace and then a draw against West Bromwich Albion. And it was fascinating what he had to say to me about that.
After the Crystal Palace game, I felt pretty alone when we were 2-1 down, 10 minutes to play, and the people left the stadium. So a couple of weeks later, we played against West Brom, scored the equalizer in the last minute. Stadium was packed until the last minute. We went there and said thank you. Everybody thought I celebrated the draw. It was not about that. It was about saying thank you to the people that they stayed. So it was all important steps for us to finally understand we can do it, but only together. There's no chance alone. You cannot do it alone, we cannot do it alone, but if we do it together, we have a chance.
Well, there you go. He would make me play for him, Greg. That's all I can say. Genius.
Yeah. I love the anecdote. I love his passion still. He's going to bring it next year. He won't be fat and happy being champions just for one season of the Premier League. And I will say, Sir Alex Ferguson, right? I'm sure we'll get him on DAZN Canada for an in-studio sit-down post-COVID-19. I know he's a big fan. And he's very popular over here. But he said those two clearly above the other 18. Sheffield United's man and obviously Liverpool's man. So, as you know, many a manager has not gotten praise from Sir Alex Ferguson. Most of the Man United managers that have followed him haven't got that kind of praise.
Indeed, indeed. Those two had special seasons. Well done, but it's Jurgen Klopp. You're watching Shootout on DAZN. Next up, the big question for Greg. Premier League signing of the season.
I know there's a player that I love, and who doesn't love him, that probably saved Man United, but I think there's only one player that saved a team from relegation, Steve, and I can't think of the last time we could say that about any one player, and it's Danny Ings. Liverpool fans know him really well, but now he's a hometown hero in Southampton, and I think he's the reason that they're not in the Championship next year and they stayed in the Premier League.
That's a very good shout, but you're right. You alluded to the fella who literally single-handedly salvaged and saved Manchester United's season, Bruno Fernandes. And that sounds a little strange considering he didn't make his debut until February the 1st. But from the moment he put on that Manchester United kit, from he took to the turf in his debut against Wolves at Old Trafford, he looked the United player. He inspired the others around him in the dressing room. 14 Premier League games, the goals and assists, 8 goals, 7 assists. Who can forget those lovely little penalties, 4 out of 4 from the spot as well? Greg, if it wasn't for Bruno Fernandes, I don't think Manchester United will be playing Champions League football next season.
But Ings, like I said, you use the phrase single-handedly. It is true beyond the shadow of a doubt when it comes to Southampton. Steve, we were having conversations in late November, early December. I'm sure you were with your mates. I was with mine who love the sport, love the league. Hey, it looks like Norwich and Southampton are going down. Who's the third team going to be that's going down? Like it felt set in stone with how bad Southampton was. 2 wins out of 12 out of the gate. They started utilizing Danny Ings. He obviously was healthy, which he never was at Liverpool. And you mentioned the penalty goals for Fernandes. How about Danny Ings scoring 21 of his 22 goals in the run of play? That's more than Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy benefited from scoring a few penalty goals. Danny Ings was not Southampton's preferred penalty taker. So he scores 21 in the run of play. Here's the thing, Steve. I think he was the signing of the year, and he was great for Southampton these last 3 or 4 months.
Full credit to Danny Ings, and Southampton might actually struggle to keep hold of him. But when you look at the money spent, people raised their eyebrows up to £60 million for Bruno Fernandes. He just hit the ground running straight away. He galvanised the Manchester United dressing room. Sometimes it's things, Greg, that us and the fans don't see. We just see a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday night on the grass. In the week, in and around the training ground, in and around the canteen, the effect that Bruno Fernandes has on all those top quality players, it actually brought a few of them out of their shell. You mentioned Pogba. Pogba suddenly thought, it's not down to me here. It isn't all on my shoulders. They weren't down. They were up because Bruno Fernandes was there as well. And then the Rashfords and the Greenwoods and the Martials as well. He was an amazing piece of business. And if he carries on at that level, he will be a huge bargain for Manchester United.
Fernandes may have saved Solskjaer's job. I don't know whether we'd be talking about a different Man United manager as we're talking right now if Man United's out of Europe. Not just the Champions League. They don't want to see the Europa League anymore. We know that at Old Trafford. It wouldn't have cut the mustard had Solskjaer not made it. They'd probably sack him if it's not for how well Fernandes played for him.
Greg, you've made a great point there. In actual fact, I think you've confirmed my victory.